The Flames finally pull the trigger on a deal for Rasmus Andersson as he lands in Las Vegas. Hey everyone, welcome into Hot Topics. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Postmedia Calgary Flames writers Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin. And guys, it seems like we've been talking about a potential Rasmus Andersson deal for a very, very long time. And it really came to a head the last few days with rumors about both the Bruins and Vegas being the teams in the mix. Ultimately, he heads to Vegas at 50% retained in exchange for Zach Whitecloud, prospect Abram Wiebe, a first-round pick in 2027, and a conditional second-round pick that becomes a first-rounder in 2028 if Vegas does win the Cup this year. Danny, we'll start with you. The initial thoughts on this return. Did Craig Conroy get enough?
He definitely got enough. I mean, I think that there are a lot of fans out there who on these trades, you know, they want you to hit a home run. They want you to, a little bit, they want you to fleece the other team. And that didn't happen. I think that you have to look at ultimately the picks as being the centerpiece of the trade. And, you know, this is something Wes and I, as we were kind of trying to figure out our coverage yesterday, talked about. But the reality is the Flames also have the Golden Knights 2026 first rounder. So what sort of is going to happen here is if the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup this year, that pick is, 32nd overall. It's the worst pick you could have in this year's first round. But then you get a first rounder in 2028. So it's like the 2026 gets worse if they win the Cup. The 2028 gets better. What do you make of that? I don't know. I don't think it's a bad situation to be in. I think realistically, like, you know, you try not to log into social media, but you do, and you see the people saying, oh, why didn't they trade him a year ago when there was more time in his contract? Well, he wasn't playing very well a year ago. They got a better package now than they would have a year ago. The fact that he has sort of indicated he was not going to sign an extension anywhere meant there were less suitors than there would have been. And ultimately, like, look, you got a couple potentially first-round draft picks here. I think you're happy with that. I'm very interested in Whitecloud. I don't know a ton about him beyond the fact that he can play penalty kill and eat minutes, which for a team that's not looking to completely bottom out right now and doesn't want to just be throwing kids into roles that they're not ready for, I think that's a decent guy to have. And as far as Wiebe goes, I know as little as you do. He's a guy I'm going to be learning about in the next couple of days.
Yeah, guys, this is how it played out for me. I was out for a walk with my dog yesterday when the first sort of news of the deal landed, and it was TSN's Darren Dreger saying, you know, Rasmus Andersson off to Vegas, and then I can't remember, same post maybe like almost immediately after said no extension, and my first reaction was, oh bleep, this is going to be bad for the Flames because Vegas doesn't have a lot in the cupboards, and with no extension, what could they possibly have extracted? And so, you know, when I did see the trade return with Whitecloud, a prospect, and potentially 2 first-round picks, I got to say, I think Craig Conroy did fairly well. You know, as Danny said, is it, you know, a home run A-plus deal? No, but I think given the circumstances and given what could have been a recipe for disaster, he did about as well as he could have. It signals, as Danny said, that they don't want to throw Hunter Brustevich and Zane Parekh to the wolves. They want someone who can eat some of Rasmus Andersson's minutes. They certainly plan to use the kids now on the power play, but it signals to me that, okay, you know, we're certainly worse. We just traded our best player. Let's open some opportunity for some young kids. But I think, and obviously I don't know all the offers that were on Craig Conroy's desk, but I would just say, you know, if you were reading about the offer from Boston or you were reading about the offer from Detroit, either A, those weren't true, or B, they hinged on an extension. And so, you know, you get down to dealing in a rental, and for that, I think Craig Conroy did about as well as he could have.
Yeah, well, it seems as these days rentals do not get as much in return, maybe as we've seen in years past. Teams are getting a little bit smarter there, but still, as you guys said, a pretty decent haul for Rasmus Andersson. So, Wes, we saw that great ovation he got the other day after the Islanders game. Clearly a fan favorite. When you spend 10 years in one place, that usually is the case for a player of his caliber. How do you think Flames fans are going to remember Rasmus Andersson's time in the city?
Well, one of the great personalities in Flames franchise history, especially in recent franchise history. You know, I wrote this yesterday, but I don't even think it was a joke. I think Rasmus Andersson will sit down on his flight to Vegas and immediately tell the person next to him how much he hates the Edmonton Oilers and then how much he hates the Vancouver Canucks. This was a guy who arrived as, okay, what can he be? Obviously, it's pretty well documented that he needed to get in better shape when he was a prospect, but he became sort of the heartbeat of the Flames blue line, and on a lot of nights the heartbeat of the entire team. He was, I think, a few games away from becoming the second player in Flames franchise history to block 1,000 shots. He would have been, had he been extended, Michael Backlund's successor as captain. His legacy in Calgary, and only reinforced by his play as he knew he was about to be traded away, is that he was one of those guys who just kind of laid it all on the line, wore his heart on his sleeve in basically every game he played. And from the stare down to the sound bites to all that stuff, I think, he'll be remembered as a guy that the entire city felt like they knew, and he certainly is going to be missed in Calgary.
Yeah, he was a bit of a scamp, you know what I mean? Like, I always liked Rasmus because I think he liked not being a troublemaker, but, there's just, he seemed to enjoy going out there and getting under opponents' skins without being, dirty or anything like that. And the reality is, like, from a media perspective, he was a joy to work with. He was one of the guys who you could count on to, I'm not saying give you good quotes, but give you honest quotes, whether he was in a great mood because they were on a winning streak or he was frustrated and a little bit angry with the way himself or the team was playing. He would come out and give you honest answers, and that is rare in hockey. So, look, I think he is unequivocally a success story. This guy, I think sometimes our expectations change over time with these guys. He was not a first-round pick. There was risk there. You didn't know if he was going to turn out, and he beyond turned out. He went from, a second-round pick who yielded you potentially 2 firsts 10 years down the road, pretty much. That's the definition of success. So I think that there will only be good memories about Rasmus's time here. It's a shame that it didn't quite turn out, with the Stanley Cup or whatever, but that doesn't happen very often in Calgary. So he's a good story for the organization, a great Calgarian in my opinion.
So this is a huge domino to fall west, and I think Flames fans are now wondering, could there be more deals on the way for Craig Conroy? You've got players, of course, like Nazem Kadri that have been talked about quite a bit. We know the clauses that he has in his contract where he can control where he goes. Are you expecting any more movement before we head into the Olympic break?
I don't know about before the Olympic break, because the player that I'm going to talk about is currently out due to an injury. He's missed the last 4 games, and that's Blake Coleman. But I think I'm really curious how Sunday's trade with the Golden Knights changes the sort of tenor around the Blake Coleman discussions. And you said it yourself, teams don't seem as interested in paying for rentals as maybe they once were. And certainly there's some exceptions to that on deadline day, but it's been proven, and especially here in Calgary, that if you wait and a player isn't willing to immediately extend, that rental isn't going to be the trade chip that you hoped it would be. And so I'm really curious now about Blake Coleman, a guy that I thought was probably getting traded anyways, and with just one season beyond this one left on his deal, suddenly this feels like high time to make the move. Another heart and soul guy, arguably the Flames' best and most consistent forward this season, 2 Stanley Cup rings in his sock drawer, and so how many teams are going to line up for a shot at him. And I think the sort of bluster about, okay, extend, not extend, that ultimately led Craig Conroy to make the deal he made yesterday with the Golden Knights could sort of change slightly the way he approaches the Coleman file.
Yeah, and I fully agree that Coleman's the most likely. Nazem Kadri's name is going to get floated out there, and it should. The reality is, Rasmus was the one player who they had to make a decision on. He was the one player who there was like a substantial amount of injury risk. Like if he got hurt, you're not getting anything. You're losing him for nothing at the end of the season. Coleman's got another year in his contract. Kadri, has a couple years left on his contract. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if a team or two checked on Mackenzie Weegar. He's not having a great season. The reality is all of those guys you don't actually need to trade. The fans who are screaming, like, let's finish last place, they believe that there's an urgency to making those deals and that they absolutely have to have him. There isn't. Chill for a second, you just traded your best player and you're, third last in the league? Like, you're not far off from where the tank people want you to be. Realistically, Nazem Kadri hasn't played very well recently, or at least isn't scoring. I don't think he scored since December 18th, so I'm not sure his stock is the highest it's ever been. There is no urgency. I do not think that you'll probably see a move happen before the deadline because you can afford to wait. You can wait right until the deadline, and that is where prices go up. Teams may not be willing to toss a bunch of money at rentals, but when their competitors have made big moves and look better, that's when the prices go up. So, if you're Conrad Wade, if the right offer comes in, do it. Otherwise, we're probably talking about Blake Coleman next January, whatever today is, 19th, and that's when you can deal them. So yeah, again, really the only urgency was Rasmus. They got the deal done. I think we're all saying there's nothing to be mad about with the deal. There's a lot to be happy about.
Can I just add one name? And the Flames didn't make this trade for this reason, but Zach Whitecloud can give you fairly significant tough minutes on a really low cap hit. He's making $2.75 million through the end of 27-28. I don't think the Flames are thinking to themselves, we're bringing this guy in as a trade chip. I do take it at face value when they say we want someone who can fill some of Rasmus Andersson's minutes, but that's a guy that contenders are going to look at and go, wonder what their plan with Whitecloud is, because at 2.75, we'd love to have a guy like that on our third pairing.
The mental notes that I made included the potential of trading Whitecloud as well. Just to be, I just forgot because I've lost my headphones, so I'm distracted.
Rob, should we just cut and start over?
Yeah, we might have to get Danny's point back in there. But I like where you guys are going. I like the
check back
the big
next week for the rest of Danny's mental notes. Yeah.
That should get its own segment on this show. Sort of what we missed. And Danny can air out all the things that he had prepared before the video started. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Danny Austin, Wes Gilbertson, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.